We're both South Yorkshire people.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you didn't live there all your life, but it's just nice to hear a familiar voice.
I know it's
Uh,
so
uh,
funny because I was listening to the Roisin Murphy one,
yeah.
and I didn't know that she'd gone to Sheffield. I'd kind of thought Manchester, and then I thought, and obviously she's near Dublin, and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And then when she said the Sheffield connection, I was like, oh my god, that's a strange loop as well, because I've done that loop.
It kind of makes sense, really. Yeah, and well, of course you have, because, and I was talking to her about growing up in Ireland um, and then moving to the north of England, and she ended up in Sheffield. You ended up in Barnsley, obviously. She ended up in Sheffield, ultimately. But when you moved to Barnsley, how old were you then?
8.
8.
Yeah.
And how long did you stay there for?
Till I was 18. Yeah.
Right, that's your formative years right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I said Barnsley is a great avant-garde compositional wonderland. No, it's not really.
I think it is. When I look back now, I go, oh my God, I had a real experience of everything from like, sadly, my piano teacher passed away like a couple of weeks ago. He was in his 80s, but he was the most amazing. He was working from like the age of 14 in the clubs and the dance halls, doing the organ and all the foot pedals and the drums all at the same time. And,
I grew up in the working men's clubs as well, when my parents used to take me down there. And that was an education, really, and going to those places from age 7 or 8, and Frank and Ernest on the drums and organ,
Yeah.
It was amazing. I mean, it was really flavoursome looking back on it. Of course, when you're young, you just think everybody has the same experiences, don't you? But Sheffield's a great place, and Barnsley's a great place. I've got a lot of good friends from Barnsley as well.
And so I was thinking about this, and I was like, oh, my piano teacher had that world. I lived in a little village called Birdwell, which is on the edge of kind of Sheffield.
Birdwell, yeah.
And there was like a Northern Soul club that I never even knew was there as I was growing up, and it's this like hot spot for Northern Soul. So and then obviously the brass bands.
Yes, love all that shit.
And then all the folk music. It's like
all the finger in the ear stuff, right? And all.
Yeah.
I was going down the miners' welfare. Yeah, my dad wasn't really into all that stuff, but he used to spend a lot of his spare time in the working men's club. So I enjoyed him coming back from the working men's club on a Friday night with a bag of mussels for me, because I love mussels. They used to have fishermen in Sheffield coming from Whitby with fresh.
Oh.
Yeah, to sell Friday and Saturday nights in the working men's clubs in Sheffield. I'm sure they did the same in Barnsley, actually.
Oh, they probably did. I used to work in a pub that was in a housing estate, which I think has been knocked down, somebody was saying, but the pub was called the White Bear, and it was amazing. It was run by this amazing landlady, and, it looked like a house in the middle of quite a rough housing estate. And at 5:00 every day for all the workmen and the guys coming in, she used to do triangles of white bread spread with dripping.
Oh, bring it on.
And then I would come in for the pints and then have the dripping bread.
It's about the antithesis of the kind of molecular gastronomy bollocks that we have to tolerate. It's funny though, it is coming back to this nose to tail eating thing now, isn't it? People are getting into offal and stuff like that. Anyway, why are we talking about offal? So let's start with. And what do you remember? What do you remember about growing up in Craigavon? Was it?
Yeah.
Tell me about your memories of that.
Yeah, I guess early 80s, mid 80s to late 80s, Barnsley. Craigavon and then to Barnsley. And, I would say both of them were pretty of their own essence in a way. Craigavon was a kind of new town, a bit like kind of Skelmersdale between Liverpool and Manchester. or Milton Keynes. It was a new town, lots of roundabouts, but then obviously mixing that with the Troubles was a disaster in some senses. Because you really had the kind of different housing estates and things going on. But, you know, I remember going to school and loving it and having a great time, but I also remember every single army checkpoint along the roads. You know, I remember on my 6th birthday going into Belfast and was running away from a bomb that went off. And, you know, I remember like one of my first memories is the bombings that were in Enniskillen, because I remember seeing us all kind of looking at the TV and a family member pointing out our car on the TV that has gone round the roundabout. So I guess when you're that young, you don't really realize what's going on, and you just kind of think, oh, this is kind of normal, or this is exciting, or look at that. You kind of feel untouchable in some senses as well. And yes, you're shielded by your parents from everything in terms of stories and who's been affected and what family members may be. So yeah, I mean, that's all I really remember. It's a lot to remember, but I guess we used to go back every single holiday. So I never had a holiday in Yorkshire. It was always back to Northern Ireland or to Donegal for every single trip. So, you know, it was my whole childhood was spent either on a plane or a ferry going back and forth.
Really? I'm married to a Northern Irish woman, so I know all about the Troubles. I mean, where she had a farm near Market Hill.
Oh yeah, I know Market Hill.
Yeah, I bet you do. It's not far, is it? So, and the people are lovely, and I always had such a great time over there. But then you got all the checkpoint thing, which really ruined everything. And in fact, before I met my wife, she said, "Oh, you see this building over here in Market Hill? It's been blown up twice by car bombs." Oh, you're exaggerating. No, it's literally dozens of people dead. And then one day when I was there, a bit later on with my young kids, a Chinook helicopter lands in their back field. You know, chasing UVF guys in a disused railway tunnel. I'm going, this is a bit too real for me. And of course, the kids are just going, oh, that's exciting. You know, I'm going, you know, and they found like caches of weapons and armaments.
Yeah, there's so many stories. I mean, as kids, we used to, when we came back, we would go to visit like grandparents and things. We had a little kind of terraced house, but backed onto a police station. And, you know, like police stations in Northern Ireland are very different from how you imagine it in England. So you have got the high walls and the barbed wire, and there was a helicopter pad that used to come in and land, and the army guys would get out and go again. And there was a shooting there where it was always something. So I'm glad, like, I'm back here now, and I'm glad that it's you know, it feels like it's more progressive. It feels like people are trying to put a lot behind them and get on, even if there is the things happening in the press. And
are you in Bangor? Did I read? Yeah, it's nice, lovely. Yeah. But do you enjoy living there now? Do you find it? I mean, you can write anywhere, can't you? And transfer files, and you can live where you want nowadays, more or less. And so, just before we leave the childhood thing, I often get asked, you know, growing up in Sheffield, how that affected my perception of sound, because we're both sound artists. Do you think what you experienced in Northern Ireland in particular had an impact on the way that you address the sound world later?
Yeah, for sure. I guess, yeah, I mean, and without a doubt, I'm very much interested in the combination of the industrial and the organic, I guess. And I think that has come from, you know, being aware of sound, even down to the kind of the sound of a ferry every time we went back and forth. And then moving to Barnsley, where it, you know, near Sheffield, and going to Sheffield and feeling that industrial kind of sound of things. There was always a metallic field.
Always.
So I guess it's definitely played a part. And one of the things, I think more kind of thematically, maybe the kind of combinations of my composition work is about bringing a lot of different worlds together and a lot of kind of textures. So you never are just like sat within a context of, it's never just electronic music that I'm producing. It's always got an element of other things. And that must come from traveling and these two completely opposite worlds at times. Even going to Donegal as a child was like, you know, heaven. It was like there was nobody around. It was sand dunes, big beaches, total escapism as kids. You know, like we named all the sand dunes. We had stories for everything. We camped out in caves, and then like you kind of going back to Barnsley and that's your kind of summer holiday. So I guess that has had an effect on my music. Maybe not as much as I think, as in like sound, as in you hear the sound palette, but definitely within the genre and the influences of melody and storytelling.
Now, storytelling, I was just about to bring that up. So, my wife, she loves a good story. You know, she was born and bred in Market Hill, and went to the University of Belfast. So, I mean, she'd spent until she was like 20 there, and you know, she grew up with a bunch of fanciful people who would embellish their lives. You know, I mean, and I know it's a bit like the Hollywood cliche going, oh, diddle diddle diddle, you know, it's not that. It's more a kind of creative attitude towards reality is how I categorize it. Well, you know, but it's like, think about it. We are, when I was brought up in Sheffield, I was brought up to think that reality is fixed, you know, or history is fixed. And you just give them facts, and these are the facts, and they'll always be the facts, and they always were the facts. And I just don't believe that's the way things work in Ireland, or for Irish people. It's like it's a shifting sands of reality, and I love it. And you can read all that stuff in Irish literature. You know, it's just a different world entirely. And I noticed it particularly when we did a tour of the west coast of Ireland, and we went round the Ring of Kerry and, you know, up towards Galway, and oh my God, those people are amongst the most interesting people I've ever met on earth. They are fanciful. I won't say fantasists. That's kind of pejorative, but you know, full of joie de vivre, but like they can mold reality to fit what they. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that Shifting Sands of Reality is like a great album title.
Go for it. I've been on this you used it.
No, I think you've totally nailed it. It's like there's always a story, or there's always a kind of like anecdote about something, or a tale, or, you know, when I was younger, I used to get so annoyed at my mum because she used to tell stories and exaggerate every story.
Everything.
And then when you met with that, and then the Barnsley kind of side of like fact, reality, very few words, and then you met with these exaggerated tales that were like made for drama, I was always like, stop doing that. But yeah, it's completely true. You know, like the people that on that west coast, especially in Donegal, that you meet, that the characters out of every kind of TV show you could imagine or paint, or, you know, their stories, their lives, and their faces are weathered, and yet they are the most amazing, welcoming, gorgeous people you'll ever meet.
Beautiful. Changed my life actually going down doing that trip. Okay, let's move on to a different thing. You know Tal Rosner, don't you?
I do. How do you?
I know Tal Rosner. I worked with him. I did a touring show called Future of Sound, where I was showing off my 3D sound system in different theatres around the country, supported by the Arts Council. And Tal came and did some. The idea was, it was a bit like a kind of gong show thing where everybody got like 15, 20 minutes to show how they might use sound in the future with their practice. And of course, he's a filmmaker, and we got on really well. I really liked Tal. He's an incredibly talented guy, and yeah, so he took one of those slots, and we did some stuff together in 3D sound and stuff. That was about 2004, 5, 6.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah, I mean, for anyone that kind of doesn't know him, he's like visuals and film and graphic designs, but like, and very much into kind of, I met him when he was doing a lot with orchestras. So he's like he's kind of, like, not animating, he's kind of taking the essence of the orchestral pieces and then like transforming them into a visual, spectacular, shape-shifting, magical world. And we worked together at Sadler's Wells. So this is maybe like around 2011, 2012, and we've been friends ever since then. So he's
So he's got into like stage design and stuff now, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I must reconnect with him. Actually, after this, if you could send me his email address, I'd like to talk to him about something.
He's amazing, right? So one of the things about Tal is he's got really kind of like wonderful kind of characteristics about the way he says things and the way he acts or the way he sits even. And then I went to LA, and he's got a brother called Leo that does a lot of film composition and classical pieces and lives in the Hollywood Hills. And the first time I went to LA, Leo took me out and around the hills, and all I could do was just keep kind of laughing at him because he had the same mannerisms. And they were both so dry humor and don't say very much. So,
yeah.
And there was, but yeah, so every time I go back to LA now, I've always got Leo to kind of go and say hello.
Oh, that's nice. So tell me, how was Lipper for you? It obviously changed your life to a certain extent, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I went, gosh, yeah, a long time ago now, it feels like. Yeah, I actually, I did apply to go there, and then I ended up going to study acting for 6 months in London. And I kind of realized that I didn't want to do acting anymore, and I really missed my music. And I wrote back to Lipper and said, please, can I come? And they said yes. So I ended up starting in the next year with them, which is amazing because I didn't have to kind of re-audition or anything. But I guess my whole time there was like, I mean, Liverpool is just it's like a second home. It still is. Like before I moved back to Northern Ireland, it was like I wanted to be back in Liverpool, and it was a hard kind of choice. But, you know, I just think the air there is very similar to actually Belfast in some sense. You're by the sea docks, you get that kind of energy that's restless and positive, and then also wild and not so positive. And I love that kind of, you know, I loved my time there. I thought it was just brilliant. Everybody's brilliant that's there. So yeah, Lipper was kind of like you were in a bubble, but I guess for me, it wasn't until I left that I really loved Liverpool. Like, I think when you're in Lipper, you're in that world, and you're working with like actors and dancers and sound designers and management course, and it's all kind of like the music industry or the arts industry in one little bubble. And then as soon as you leave, it's kind of like, oh, where's it gone? So I guess a lot of my time was spent playing in different bands, like Liverpool bands, when I'd left, like playing the violin and trombone and singing. And I kind of earned my spurs and learned a lot by playing with different bands and then touring. So
yeah. So which bands did you tour with?
Gosh. So I used to play with a band called the Aeroplanes, and we did.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
This is going back like 2007. There was another band called Peter and the Wolf that were brilliant. A guy called Howie Payne, which I think his brother is related to the Zootons. There's gosh, like so
did a lot of stuff then, basically.
Yeah, I basically like.
You were one of these. I can tell. I bet you were one of these go-to people, who, they'll probably go, "Oh yeah, that Hannah, she's good. Got a good energy. We'll have her on tour because you need people with good energy on tour, don't you? You can't be having moaning minis on tour."
No,
So,
And yeah,
not just
sessions.
about how talented you are, it's about...
I just think I just loved it there. And, I met Bill Ryder Jones. I did a session for him when he was just leaving the choral, and
Right.
yeah, no, it was...
The choral were good. I like the choral. And you met Paul McCartney, right?
I did.
And he liked you, didn't he?
I did. He was lovely. Hang on, the dog deciding to rip up a cardboard box. Yeah. He's only a puppy. He's like 9 months old. So.
Oh, bless. Yeah, so Paul McCartney, and he was complimentary to you, and
yeah, he was lovely. He was really nice.
I don't suppose you've kept in touch by any chance.
Gosh, I wish that would be nice. It'd be nice to go. He probably doesn't have a clue who I am. We had that many students, but I think that's the good thing about there is he still comes back and shakes the hand of every single student that goes through the doors, and I think it was a really lovely thing. So one of the things that I did was like have this kind of, when you're in your final year, if you're doing songwriting or composition, the tutors will pick you to say, oh, do you want to have a 15-minute lesson with McCartney? And so I was lucky enough to be able to do that.
Hey.
But the reality was that his guitar and I played in this like completely minimalist type music that you can't really play guitar along to. So we ended up just watching the films that I'd made the music for, and having a laugh about it and talking about that, which was like the people that were in and out before me were like able to play with him and like go, here's my song, and he would play along with it and sing.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's done like orchestral stuff. I mean, you never know. He might need an arranger or somebody to do something, a big thing. So at this point you must have been thinking you have a strong idea of what you want to, direction you want to go in, even if you didn't know what the end goal was. You obviously felt, according to what I've read anyway, that you started becoming interested in the more avant-garde stuff, but also like were you working at all to picture then? Did you have any of that experience, or does that come later?
Yeah, so part of my final degree piece I wanted to do was for 3 kind of went down to the BFI and chose kind of 3 Dada films, like 1930s experimental films that needed music or didn't need music, obviously, but I wanted to do the soundtrack live. And that kind of triggered off quite a lot of the energy that I loved that you got from seeing live music and visuals working together, especially when they're kind of in partnership, not just kind of like colors everywhere. And that was the best time I really experienced that kind of spine tingling feeling that I'd not had from music before. I mean, I'd had it in a way, like sometimes when everyone's singing in a pub or like doing kind of Irish folk sessions, and you kind of get that feeling of where you just like want to cry for no reason. But I'd never had it in my own music or in terms of like the music I was interested in. So I went to see A Man with a Movie Camera with Cinematic Orchestra in Manchester, and it was the first time I'd ever experienced like watching something and then getting that spine-chilling feeling. And I was like, I want to make music for movement, basically.
Yeah.
But, like I suppose with my degree, I was doing a lot of MD work. So I was like doing a lot with the actors and the dancers. And when I graduated, that continued for like a good kind of 5 or 6 years, just with the amateur dramatics, and then a couple of shows that went on to the kind of the Lowry in Manchester, and short films that people were making in Liverpool, and like little theatre shows that were on it, like the Everyman and the Playhouse. And so there was always an element of drama somewhere that I wanted to touch into, and I applied to do a master's in kind of film composition and didn't get in because they said my classical kind of side wasn't up to scratch.
Oh, that's just bollocks. I'm sorry.
I know it is bollocks. But then you when you're that young, you kind of think, oh, this is crap. So, but what somebody was really nice on one of the panels that I did, or the audition panel things, and rang me up afterwards and said, look, just find your own sound, keep going. You've got a great sense of melody and timing, and you'll get there in the end with your own voice. And that was the best advice anybody ever really gave me until that point. So, and then I just happened to stumble upon the music box.
Yeah.
And started making, just for a joke, like Tainted Love on the music box. And
it's a work of genius. Come on, having that.
But it, at the time it was like, I'm so fed up with everything. I'm just going to punch holes in this piece of paper and make this. And,
brilliant. Yeah, but you make it sound like, that's what anybody would do, but it's not.
But what happened was, because it was so like unique in its sound, I recorded it in my bedroom and I sent it off to someone, like, to see if they'd be interested in, like, maybe putting it out as an EP. It was like a little 4-track, and he ended up sending it to Static Caravan, who's Jeff, who runs that, is in Birmingham, and he puts out kind of 7-inch singles and small EPs, small runs of things. And he's a scientist full time, but he started off bands like Tongue and myself and Beth Jeans Houghton, who's now The Blonde. And so there's a whole like legacy of people through like the last 20 years that have come through Static Caravan. Anyway, long story short, as a sync agency picked it up, and Tainted Love then went on to be on a lot of adverts and in a couple of films and trailers and TV shows.
Who'd have thought? Who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thought? And it was like my dream had come true. Like, everything that I wanted to do in film and TV was just there. So
right,
opened the door, and that's where I've been heading ever since. So
I just have to interject in terms of the timeline at this point and say that your new album is just fantastic. I've been listening to it all day while I've been doing other things. I'm going, this is just, I mean, it's very similar in a lot of ways to the sort of stuff I create nowadays. And it's actually addresses a lot of the same concerns, funnily enough. I'm going to introduce you to someone called Dan Morell, who contacted me. He's the guy who invented the concept of carbon neutral, the idea of planting trees around the world and all that stuff. He started that. He invented the term, and he started a company to do that. And of course, usual thing, he ended up having to take some venture capital, and he got chucked out of his own company, and now he's starting another one. And he's an amazing kind of eco warrior, but he's also an entrepreneur. And I think, based on the themes of what that album's about, I think there's definitely some synergy there. And his next thing is it's called Balance, and it's going to be concerned with music as well. So they're creating a special app where people can contribute their voices to existing backing tracks, and it kind of tunes them and everything, and then it proliferates, and then you can buy it, and like £2 from that goes to plant a tree and all this stuff. Anyway, beyond me. He's a nice guy. I'll introduce you to him.
Okay.
And then John Fox, he's a lovely lad, isn't
he? Yeah, he's great. I liked your podcast with him, actually, because I really... John's one of those people that you learn something about every single time you talk to him. There's always another layer to kind of peel back, or some kind of other experience. Like, I didn't know about his parents. I've known him for years. I didn't know his dad was a boxer, and
I didn't. Didn't come up on the internet, all that stuff. So saved it for me. I'm very happy that he told me. But we go back a long way anyway, to like before you were born, literally. Before your bum was as big as a shirt button, as my mum would say. And God, I'm turning into an old bloke. Oh no!
I don't want to say.
I'm old Sheffield saying so.
I remember you when you were tiny.
Yeah, exactly. But the stuff you've done with John and the maths is great. And do you know what I like about? I've looked through all your work now, and I've listened to a lot of it, and in detail. And it's just the level of bravery is quite impressive. And I often say to my students who are teaching an MA course in songwriting and production, I often say to them, the ones who are a little bit shy, perhaps not shy, lacking in confidence, I say to them, you need more fuck you in you. And I think there's an element of that in the Northern attitude. Yeah. It's a bit like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Particularly in Sheffield, actually, it's a maker community. You know, they're very proud about the crafts and skills, and it's in the DNA. And they just, you know, it's the same. Sheffield bands, they just do stuff. I mean, Arctic Monkeys is the epic fuck you band, isn't it? It's like, I'm going to do something that's totally different. It's going to sound like nobody else. And if you like it, that's great. And if you don't, I don't mind particularly because I really like it. And I think there's some of that in you. I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but you do it in a much more kind of elegant and beautiful and incredibly musical way, which impresses me greatly, I have to say.
Thanks.
But yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to make that point for the podcast listeners because I want to encourage them to go and listen to your back catalogue, you know, which is all online pretty much. So I want to discuss entering the world of kind of soundscapes and immersion and installation work. Because to me, when I was doing the touring show, the Future of Sound thing, what I realised was everything was converging on one point. So everything. So it's that point, that vanishing point, is storytelling. Yeah. So everything's in the service of that. So it can start with music or traditional songs or whatever, folk songs even, and then it turns into like, really, what you're trying to do is create significance for people, and then try to manipulate's the wrong word, but try to influence their emotions. And I think a lot of what you do is very emotional music, despite the fact it's using a lot of technology. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Without doubt. I think that it kind of traces back to what you were saying, and thank you for saying all that, because I think it's really important, because I think there's definitely an element of, maybe because I always felt I was like an outsider, but you always are still influenced by the people that you're with and the attitudes of people. So there's always been, I probably wouldn't stand up to somebody and say fuck you in person, but in music and the way I kind of express things through emotion and trying kind of a fearless kind of trying out of things of like, I want to create this, how do you do it, I want to make that, then that attitude has kind of come into play. So it's there's definitely an element of everything you're saying, in a way that, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you're so softly spoken and you're so nice or whatever. And then, you know, I'm a redhead. I'm a raging redhead at times. It's just nobody would see that, but it does. I do try to tell that story and tell the emotion through the music, because sometimes I can't express it in words, and I can't say to someone, you know, I do feel like a lot of the work that I've done is through suppression, oppression in various guises, whether that be a musician and a female musician in the industry, or whether that be just through the lives that I've gone through in terms of, you know, the political stances, the Northern Irish, the Barnsley, the outsider feelings. They do tell a story, and music is my only kind of outlet for that emotion, because I feel like anything I say can sometimes be bitten back at you. Like even social media, if I get one kind of trolling comment fucking hell, it destroys me. So I try and do everything that isn't like, at least with music, you can suggest something and you can put something out there, and then it's easier for people to go, well, I don't like that, but I do appreciate that, or I don't like that, or I associate with that story of dementia, and I can feel where you've come from. So
by the way, they're talking about titles for albums or whatever. Outsider Emotions is pretty good.
yeah, that's good. I like this one.
Yeah.
So see how many we come up with by the end.
It's like playing tennis. Idea tennis. I just want to touch on. Right, I'm a passionate advocate for increasing the role of women in the music industry. Yeah. It really matters to me, that and youth. I think, I fought long and hard as the Ivers Academy to get them to take the youth council as a serious thing.
Yeah.
Because they literally turned around to me and said, "Oh yeah, good idea. They can have observer status."
Oh no, where's that like?
And I said, "I tell you what, you do that, and you won't even have me as observer status. I'm out." Because we worked on it for quite a while. And it's only because I put my foot down that they said, all right, they got full rights in the board, voting rights. And got observer status. You can pick a greater metaphor for the lack of rights for young people than that, could you? Anyway, so there's that. But female creators need support to get to increase the power. I know it's something you're passionate about. Tell us about your role in that then, or your advocacy for that.
Yeah, well, firstly, with joining the Ivers this year, and seeing the Youth Council and how utterly brilliant and amazing and passionate and how gorgeous their ideas are just like, I'm just like, everyone just needs to listen every time they speak, because it's just, they're learning, and I'm like, even like, 10 years older than them, and I'm like, God, this is so complicated sometimes, and they just get it, and they do.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant. So I'm really, really glad you put your foot down for that. I guess, in terms of my role, I had very little role models that were female growing up. Like, I never really had anyone that I looked to in terms of in person as a female artist or as a musician. I didn't know anybody personally. And, so I guess my peers were all, always have been men, and always have, and I've always felt that I was never sidelined, or not that I was aware of at the time. I never thought I would have been sidelined. And, I ended up working with the most extraordinary people, like John Fox, for example, is just amazing to work with, and is a complete mentor in terms of his attitude and his story and the way he kind of presents himself even now. Like, I feel very lucky that I've had that experience, that I haven't had the experiences that a lot of others have had. I've been kind of taken under the wing by a lot of people and said, look, you're really good, you can do this, you can do that. From John to kind of Andy McCluskey and OMD and now kind of Paul Weller as well. And it's very, very kind of brilliant mutual music understanding. And I think I feel very lucky and grateful to have had those experiences up to now. And so I guess going back to having a role model and seeing different kind of people come through the ranks, what I'm trying to do is always make sure that if anybody contacts me for advice or anything, I'm very, very quick to go, yep, you can have my time. I will help you. If you want to release a record, here's where to do it. You can do it, and more encouragement and positivity. And, I would, because I do the broadcasting for Radio 3, I would very much always look for the female artists, the independent ones, mostly because they're the ones that are like me in terms of self-releasing, putting your music out, being brave about things, and always look to kind of support that and give them a voice and airtime and airplay and put them on the playlists.
Right.
And it's created a whole talking point that I never had when I was starting out.
No.
It's like groups of, I've got so many female friends now that actually support each other and are very much open arms. Whereas before you were always put in competition with the other musician, or there was always some kind of like jealousy, or it was horrid. Like, that I can't count the number of times that I felt animosity through even different artists. And, even like when I did the Alison Moyer tour, it was brilliant, but I still felt like I was kind of like getting in the way. Like I was the young.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't feel fully embraced. I was kind of told not to do certain things by the management and stuff like that. And you just kind of go, is this because I'm a female artist and I'm a threat? Or is this because I am just a supporting artist and you don't want me to have?
I do think it's very nice. I mean, I know Alison, and she can be a bit spiky at times. So I don't think it was. I don't.
It didn't come from her. She was, when I saw her and everything, she was brilliant. But it didn't. I don't know, if it had been me, I would have like really embraced the younger support artist on her own.
Always.
Gone. Come on here. I'm going to help you every day. I'm going to.
Yeah. Always. Always got to. We supported Iggy Pop on a tour in 1979 around Europe, and
amazing.
Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols was the bass player, and he was so lovely. I mean, he's on the podcast as well, and I've worked with him with my BF projects as well. He's just one of the nice guys, right? So anyway, but even when he was young, he was only like 23 then or something. He felt like a mentor, and some people just have that in their soul. You're one of them. I'm one of them. And I think it's people like us that want to get involved in advocacy for helping people who don't have a voice. Anyway, I think good on you. I think that's very, very well put, and very lovely sentiment. But it's based in in practical help.
Yeah.
That's what I always say to people. It's like fine words, but you got to. It really needs a positive thing. Just want to mention to you, Ellie from LaRue, right? Who's a spiky character, right? But she's great, and we're really good mates. And she's done some stuff down here at Tyler Education, and she said what really is passionate about encouraging young women to get into record production. Yeah. It's like a real problem. It's like 95% are male in record production. And some of it's confidence. It's changing, but it needs proactive. So she's been trying to organise a bunch of female artists to come together to kind of make more of a noise, really. So there's another person I need to. I don't know if you know her. Do you know?
I don't know her personally. No, not at all.
Oh,
that's
right.
great. Yeah, please.
That's another one I need to introduce you to. She's lovely, and she's a bit bonkers. We all are, aren't we?
Yeah. Definitely.
So, moving on. Yes, what am I looking at? Oh, Alzheimer's. So, you've done some work around that theme as well, haven't you? Is that right?
Yeah. So 2016, I released an album called Awake But Always Dreaming, which was mostly. The beginnings of it were completely different. They were based on the amazing Calvino book called Invisible Cities.
Oh my God, it's my favorite. It's my favorite book of all time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean,
amazing.
I lived in Venice for a long time, and I'm about to move back.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, what a book! Brilliant.
Yeah, magical and like completely inspiring for music and stories, and taking your mind away from things. And then, so I set about making a song for every single city, the 55 cities.
Oh.
And for ages, and I was obsessed, like on the studio walls, I had like kind of weird, surreal landscapes and brutalist structures from the Soviet Union, and like just these kind of obscure places. But during that whole time, it's like one of those things that sometimes when you write about things, but you don't actually know why you're doing it. And and then you go, oh my God, I've been doing this. And, gradually throughout this whole period, my grandmother was getting worse and worse. And, it was just heartbreaking. And I guess I kind of came to the kind of realization that I was building these worlds in order to kind of somehow substantiate where she was going, or to imagine where she was going. And it wasn't until like I kind of hit a real kind of low point. I didn't have much work. I wasn't doing many gigs. I'd done a few EPs. And so I decided to do a writing course of short stories at the Bishopsgate Institute in London, and ended up like writing short stories for like 3 or 4 months. And what came out of that was all these different worlds of imagining where she'd gone, and everything just kind of connected.
Wow.
And so, that's a lot of the tracks that are on that record, Octavia, that came out just before that. There's a track called Chloe. They're all cities that were in Invisible Cities book.
I never realised that's titles. Yeah, I never connected it. Oh my God, I must read it.
And it, I guess playing with John Fox around that same time as well, and the way he sings about the kind of structures and the way his lyrics are placed are so wonderful. You attach your own emotions to them, and that played a massive part in how I songwrite.
Right.
And so I had this kind of experience with my grandmother that I had read about, like singing. At the time, it wasn't well spoken about. I think it's definitely more in the press now, and it's more kind of, there's a lot more charity work. But at the time, there was nobody really talking about it. It felt like a bit of a taboo subject, that there was a connection between music and Alzheimer's, or dementia actually as a whole. And so I just said to my family at Christmas, let's sing a song, sing some Christmas carols and see if she reacts to them, because she used to be able to recite poetry, but she then lost that ability as well. And she went from kind of that horrible kind of still state that you see a lot of older people in nursing homes sitting in their own little world. She went from that to her eyes opening and her head lifting and her singing carols and all the words, and it was just magical. Like I'll never forget that experience of just awakening somebody.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I have a story to tell you about. I was asked by the University of Plymouth, a friend of mine down there. They were doing a weekend festival about Alzheimer's for Alzheimer's families. And they had a small auditorium, it's like 250 or something. And they had various people writing stuff for it. And some of it was about, it was like a kind of, I didn't think it was for the people. It was more like, oh, here's me doing the right thing, right? And I thought, no, I'm going to, my mother-in-law died of Alzheimer's, so I know all about it. And yeah, horrible. And anyway, so I thought, what can I do with I took my 3D sound system into the auditorium, and I said, what I want to do is I want to write a piece of music that is part sonic montage and part live composition with electronics that are responding to the sonic montage, and part of it improvisation. And it was just me on stage. Most of it was prefigured, and some of it was responsive. And in 3D, so immerse them. So that's an interesting thing for them anyway. And I thought, I had a responsibility to the audience for this, because, there's some very, very ill people in there. Mm-hmm. And the piece, I spent a month researching it. And basically what I did was I found a load of songs that had memory at the core, lyrically at the core of what the meaning was of the song. Some of them were old songs, kind of like mid 20th century. Some were more contemporary. But I kind of created this montage, and in 3-dimensional sounds. So several things were kicking off at the same time, but I made sure they were all in the right key. First of all, not to frighten anyone, because it's a frightening experience being in that state. And at the end, I had about 10 different families come up to me and go, it's the first time my mum or my dad has responded for months. I just want to shake your hand and thank you. And they were crying and all sorts. And I just think a lot of the time, people who are very ill just want to know that people consider them.
Yeah.
And I've seen this in special education needs schools as well. The idea of sensory rooms is almost like, we're treating you because you have certain symptoms. Not like, I'm a small child, I'm in a dark room and you're showing me why are you showing me like light up, fiber optic ropes? What are you doing? They can't express themselves properly. And so anyway, it was a big success, and it kind of in a small way changed the way that they treated people, going back to their own hospitals and care homes and what have you. So that's that story. And then there's another little thing I want to tell you about, which is I noticed when I was doing research on you that you have a kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but a kind of synesthetic connection between graphic design, shape and sound and composition. Do you feel that case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so when I went to Dubai to do a M17 gig, and I was in the swimming pool, as you do. There's nothing else to do there, it's horrible. But anyway, and I was lying there in the swimming pool looking at the horizon, and the sun was going down, and it's like this jagged skyline of buildings on the horizon. I thought, God, I was kind of musing after a couple of cocktails, going, maybe I could translate that into, maybe if I took that as like a kind of barcode and translated it into musical notes, that'd be interesting. Yeah. And I'm going, that's fine. Then I thought, there's something not right with this scene. I'm looking at it, and I realised as the light got lower and lower, there were no lights on in any of the buildings. They looked like cardboard cutouts in black.
Wow.
None of the buildings were occupied. None of them.
That's awful.
This was capitalism gone crazy. Everybody just built these things as an investment, and they're all empty. Anyway, that was an interesting thought, wasn't it? But I like the idea of the kind of ziggy-zaggy skylight being music. I'm going to do it one day. I took a photo of it. Okay, we're getting close to the end of this. Have you ever done anything like that? Sorry, I was going to ask you.
Not skyline, but I guess talking about fairwave and how that has like influenced the patterns in nature, influenced the tracks in themselves and the essence of the artwork. Does have that succinct feeling of like not necessarily a landscape, but of the more biological sense and ecological sense. So,
I love that book. Somebody bought it for me. It's like a little book. It's beautiful. It's like Sacred Geometry, it's called. And it's like an examination of the patterns in nature and how they relate mathematically. And again, another one.
It's like it's just everything, and that's why I wanted to make an electronic record that felt like it was part of the, it's not digital, it's not analog, it's part of the environment that we're in. Like that every sound you hear is part of what makes up an electronic music track. It's like, like that kind of defining sort of like, I guess I read an interview with Vangelis, and he was like saying that he saw no difference between the orchestra and the electronics, and And I was like, yes, that's exactly how it should be. It's just sound. It shouldn't be defined by this or that. And, the one thing that holds us back is that it's harder to notate electronic music in order to play as an ensemble or in order to give that part to somebody else. But, that's the excitement as well. That's the thing that makes it
beautiful. The magic happens in that interstitial space between orchestras and electronics. I've only ever managed to commit it to tape once with Hem 17, which is on a track called The Best Kept Secret. It's on Luxury Gap. And basically it's a 50-piece orchestra. And then I thought it would be beautiful to weave electronics in and out of the orchestra, so you couldn't tell what was special kind of violin techniques or whatever. What was real, what wasn't. So the brief I gave to the arranger, I mean, I can't read or write music, so I have to do everything. But the brief I gave to the arranger was I want it to be expressionistic, and the some of the stuff that had to be in the composition was based around chords that we'd written. But the techniques for the orchestra had to be like early 20th century composers, like Russian composers and weird stuff, Prokofiev and all that. Amazing. And I love all that stuff, and also Debussy as well. And he just knocked it out of the park. A guy called John Wesley Barker. And so then I took this, which is my System 100, which is just the most gorgeous sounding machine, and I designed sounds to weave in and out of the orchestra, and you couldn't tell what was people scraping strings or it could have been anything. And I did a project recently about the rainforest where I got access to lots of field recordings of birds and frogs and stuff in the Colombian rainforest, and they asked for a response for it from composer. And so what I did was I created an immersive 3D sound rainforest, placed the individual birds in different places in 3D, and had them being responded to by sounds from that I designed on the System 100.
Oh, I love that.
So it's like you couldn't tell what it's like kind of Sonic Avatar film,
But I love that play between what is the instrument and what isn't, because that I did that with the Mary Casio, the brass band album. Like there's points in it where you're like, is that the brass band or is that the synthesizer? And it doesn't matter as long as you like get into the soul and the storytelling of it. But it was really like key for me to like always have the kind of even the detail of like the spit of the players or the turn of the page or the creak of a seat, and mix that with the nuances of the synths, and then how you can create a completely different sound world from that. So yeah, I love that amalgamation. I think that's the most exciting thing. It's those bringing together worlds
that's where the magic happens.
That you can't in any other situation.
Yeah, I think that's where the magic happens. And I think I need to come on your program. And we need to talk about it on your radio, your Radio 3. But particularly when this is like the charity record anyway. But it's Brian Eno's on it as well, on this album that's coming out.
Where can I hear this?
It's not out yet. It's coming. It's just about to be mastered in the next few days. But when it comes out, can I give you a shout and see if you're interested in?
Yes, please.
And maybe I can even persuade Brian to come on.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah. I'm trying desperately to negotiate with him to come on the podcast, and he's up for it, but he's so busy all the time.
Yeah.
Problem. Anyway, I think we've covered quite a lot of interesting stuff there, don't you?
Yeah, I've had a great chat. Thank you.
Oh, good. Now this is the daft bit we do at the end, which you probably heard already, where do like smash hits questions of your favourite. So what's your favourite film?
Oh no.
One of them. One of them.
Oh my God. Okay, Once Upon a Time in America.
It's a great film, isn't it? That.
Yeah, I think it, but it's like that and a toss up between that or North by Northwest.
Yeah. I mean, I like both. I mean, like millions of
I
films.
think it's the soundtrack. It's the soundtrack that makes the best film. I can't
It's
help it.
Morricone,
But yeah, and he wants to.
yeah.
Yeah, Morricone or Ben Herman. Yeah.
Bernard Herrmann, yeah. Favorite book? Invisible Cities.
Invisible Cities. It's got to be
Yeah.
Italo Calvino.
Yeah, brilliant. He's brilliant. Have you ever, by the way, read his the translation of his? He did a collection of Italian folk tales,
Oh no.
like the really dark stuff, like the original Pinocchio, and the really dark. I mean, like as dark as Grimm's fairy tales, but Italian. It's fantastic. You need to look that up. TV show, current or past?
Father's Head.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, how many times have I watched Father's Head? I could probably write the scripts.
Can't help it. It's just everything. Everything. Every line, everything. Love it. Father's Head.
Other musical artist or composer?
Steve Reich.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
And I would say Steve Reich in terms of just like opening my mind to a lot of other worlds and opening my mind to minimalism music. And then that led into kind of like Brian Eno. Well, it kind of stemmed off from kind of John Cage into that world and then Terry Riley and off. But so Steve Reich would still be the kind of pinnacle point, I guess. But then as far as a kind of pop, not even a pop record, but it in a sense of like Laurie Anderson's or Superman, that I just
Genius.
And oh my god, there's so many. Blue Nile, oh my god, like Walk Across the Rooftop is just like one of my favorite records. So yeah, god, there's so many composers and people. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Ambition unfulfilled.
Oh, of what I'd like to music or just in like anything. I would have really liked to have been a detective.
You still can.
Really, really, but more like as in like a pathologist, like kind of.
Yeah, like all that forensic stuff.
Yeah, just really, really would have loved to have done that. And I did sciences at school and sixth form, and yeah, chose music. But I love unearthing things, and I guess that still resonates in my music.
God, you are so like my wife. God, honestly, that's one of her ambitions as well, to be a forensic detective. Anyway, you can never get away with anything with her. It's impossible. Visual or conceptual artist?
Leonora Carrington.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Had that one before. Which of your own work are you most proud of?
Can I say something that's coming out in the future? Yeah, I've got a record coming out next year, and I think it's I think it's either that or Mary Castillo with the brass band.
Right.
But the thing that's coming out next year, I'm really, really proud of. I think it's really special.
Are you going to tell us? No.
No. Well, I don't know. When is this podcast going out?
Yeah. It'll be sometime in the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
I've made a piece with the Para Orchestra, and I'm very, very proud of it. But I think what makes me proud of it is the collaboration and the collaborative essence to it, because it was collaborative from the word go. From even like kind of like we did some R&D days with Adrian Utley at his studio, and
got an interview with him coming out as well.
Oh,
and Will Gregory.
Oh,
I did a big 3D sound concert with them in the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg, and we did bloody amazing. I performed with the Moog ensemble.
Oh yeah, nice.
They're amazing. Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to that then. That's great. So when's that coming out? Did you say?
I don't know yet. but it's in the making right now. And yeah, I just think it's one of those projects that, like when there's nobody in it that's negative, there's nobody in it that brings any kind of bad essence to it. It's all like everybody takes their role, does their thing, brings magic to it. It just makes it this whole delicious, gorgeous thing that I don't care if anybody likes it or not. I'm just so proud of it and the musician, everybody on it. So
that's great. I did an improvised thing with a BBC radiophonic workshop, and it just turned out amazing. I mean, some of it was rubbish, but we edited that bit out, and we put it out on vinyl, and it was just a joy because it was completely unplanned. The true essence of improvisation, And anyway, that's another thing. And finally, what's your favorite synth? It can be it can be analog or digital, virtual, whatever you want.
It has and always has been the Roland Juno 60. I still haven't found anything else that surpasses my feelings for that.
Really?
Yeah.
So I've done, I don't know, over 40 of these now. No, nearly 50. And no two people have said the same since.
Really?
Isn't that incredible?
Wow, that's
the odds would be you'd have more people liking the Mini Moog or whatever.
Yeah.
No two synths the same on any of them.
Wow. Do you think it's like the nostalgia of it? The Geo definitely for me is nostalgia. It's the memory of my first kind of exploration, and the Geno has always been there.
I think there's some of that, but I think it's to do with the process.
What's your
Mine?
favorite synth?
Mine is that one, the System one.
Yeah.
But I like the Jupiter 4 as well. Where is it? There.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've got one of those there.
Oh,
It's
great.
Yeah.
But I think it's more about the kind of methodology that you use things with and the process that involved that appeal to differently to different people. I don't think it's just about the sounds they make. It's about what fits your personality.
Yeah.
Or how experimental it is. How many great sounds can you get out of it with minimum effort,
Oh, I love this though. Somebody needs to write a book on how it fits, which one fits your personality, a bit like a kind of like when they do the key tests of what jobs you're going to get. What about like...
Oh, yeah, psychometrics.
Yeah.
Great idea. We need to psychometrically test everyone.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. That's a great idea. I'm thinking about actually doing a compilation of stuff from the all these interviews and having it as like, because it's really interesting to contrast and compare, not just the questions at the end, but people's attitude towards things. I think it's like, I feel like I'm building a 10,000 piece jigsaw at the moment. It's really interesting.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And
thank you.
Let's carry on and make the world a better place for as many people as possible, shall we?
Yeah. And hello to everybody listening.
Yeah. And make sure, by the way, pod dogs, whatever you are, go and listen to Hannah's stuff because it's fucking amazing. Honestly, it'll change your life.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you, Martin.
All right, darling. I will see you at the next board meeting, probably, if we ever have one in the flesh again.
Oh, that would be something.
All right, darling. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much.
Bye.